Seconds. Here. Hey, welcome everyone to day 2 of the Notary Public Day Extravaganza. I have my good friend, Michelle Riley from Alabama with the group. Well, she's got a group, Alabama for Notaries, and I am so happy to have her here today. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us.
Always. Anything for you, Marcy. I mean that. And
I appreciate that. Thank you. Michelle is going to talk to us a little bit about RIN, Remote Ink Notarization. And I'm just going to say this before I log off of here. I thought before we talked about this, I don't know, last year, I think, we thought there was like a handful of states. But then we found out there were many more states than we thought. And then we also realized we didn't think that notaries even understood what to do or how to do it in their state, and what a good marketing tool this is. Like, you're missing out on an opportunity, which is why I'm so glad that Michelle came and talked to us about this today. So as usual, chat amongst yourselves in the chat. Throw any questions you have in the Q&A. We'll kind of answer as we go, but we'll definitely do a Q&A at the end. So Michelle, I'm turning it right over to you.
Thank you, Marcy. And a special shout out to those of you who are from the state of Alabama. I see you and I appreciate your support. I started performing remote. Well, one, I've been a notary for about 20 years now, and I got on the remote ink bandwagon when many of us did during COVID-19. I had a office back in 2019 where I could meet with signers, and early on in the pandemic, I tried to continue to notarize in person. But, in that first year or so of the pandemic, I had to finally concede that I didn't feel comfortable being that close to signers, and they did not feel that good being that close to me. And so I was really happy when the state of Alabama allowed us to perform remote ink notarization. It has changed quite a bit since the pandemic, but currently it is the only type of remote notarization that Alabama notaries are allowed to perform. So what I want to cover with you today about RIN, not so much from the standpoint that, wow, you've got to really start performing this type of notarization, but those of you who are notaries for your employer, and also those of you who have a notary business, I'd like to give you some information so that when you get a phone call or a request from someone who is between a rock and a hard place, and a signature needs to be notarized, but the signer is somewhere that they can't get in front of a notary in person, it's possible that RIN could be a solution. And so the basic, I think most notaries know, remote notarization, the notary and the signer need to be in different locations. And in preparing for this presentation, one of the things I learned about is that there are 1 or 2 states who say, yeah, they can be in different locations, but we need them to be in different states. In the same state. And that blew my mind. But really, truly, it only to me makes sense to use remote notarization and remote ink notarization, not only when the signer and the notary are in different locations, but in different states and in different countries. The signer is going to start off with a paper that needs to be signed and notarized in hand. The signer is going to need to satisfy a definition of proof of identity. And it does vary per state what acceptable proof of identification is, and we'll look at some of that. But again, with REN, remote ink notarization, the notary is going to verify the signer's ID either visually by having the signer hold their ID card up to the camera in some instances. In other instances, the REN notary will need to use technology that utilizes credential analysis or knowledge-based authentication. And in some instances, like Alabama, the notary is going to be required to check public and private data records. Continuing on with how REN works, generally speaking, the notary is given a script, a state mandated script that he or she must follow. They still have to perform the typical verbal ceremonies, checking to make sure that the signer understands what they're signing, administering any oaths or affirmations or acknowledgments. In most states that allow for REN, the notary is going to watch as the document gets signed and dated with wet ink. Believe it or not, there are going to be a few states who kind of tweak that requirement. The signer then is going to sign the form. In some instances, they sign the form off camera and then mail it to the notary for the next part of the notarization process. Once the notary receives that signed document, the notary is going to complete the notarial certificate, filling in the venue, which is always going to be where the notary was located at the time that the notarization took place or the signer signed the form. The certificate
Oh, I think you froze, Michelle. Give you a minute here. Hang tight, everybody out there, while we overcome this little technical difficulty.
Am I still frozen?
Oh, nope, you're unfrozen now.
All right, if it happens again, let me go. I've got a backup laptop standing by.
Okay, sounds good.
All righty. So again, the venue is where the notary was located at the time the signer signed off. The date on the notarial certificate will be the date that the signer signed the form. And some REN states have a special REN notarial certificate that indicates that the document was notarized remotely. Not all REN states do, a few do. When it's the notary's turn to complete that second half of the notarization, the notary must use wet ink as well, and then use the usual embosser or ink stamp and add their usual credential information. Usually the notary is required to record the REN notarization in either a logbook or a journal, and a few states will allow an electronic journal to be used for this type of notarization. Once the notary is done, the notary then mails that original document, notarized document, either back to the signer, but in most instances, by then the notary is going to just forward it to its final destination. Because keep in mind that signer is usually in a foreign country or a different state. And so the notary is now just completing the process. In most states, the notary is required to not only record the whole online event, but also maintain that recording for a period of 7 to 10 years. Proof of ID falls in a couple categories. Personal knowledge is the preferred method. States that do allow credible witnesses, that can be used. And for those other states, the notary must require either one or two forms of government issue ID, use KBA or credential analysis, or by checking public or private data records. Hopefully I'm still up and running.
You're doing great. And I just want to answer one quick question here. If you're in a state that doesn't allow for remote ink notarization, I would let you know that this is a good opportunity to partner up with a notary in a state who does, for a couple of reasons, because someone's asking what the benefit would be. So for example, here in New York, there are some documents that we can't execute by remote online notarization. So a lot of times I will refer those jobs to a notary who can conduct RIN because it's wet ink and the state will still allow it. So the benefit to RIN is for receivers of documents that don't allow for RON, or for documents that can't be executed by RON. I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone who's listening. All right, Michelle, it's all you.
Thank you. All right. The ID requirements, government issue requirements, nothing special there at all. They want one of those, of course, to have the usual photo, physical description, signature. In Alabama, one way that we notaries need to verify ID is, again, to check public or private records. And I've had to do this a couple of times, which is to identify these types of documents online, again, just to further confirm the signer's identity. In the states that do allow for REN, you still must have, as a notary, an active traditional notary commission. A few states require REN notaries to apply to be a REN notary and complete a separate application and be approved. Those states are maintaining a database of the notaries who are allowed to perform REN. Illinois requires a separate surety bond. Delaware also requires separate REN training. I'm in a state, Alabama, that does not require me to use a platform, a state-approved platform. And this slide is telling part of the story. Most of the other REN states do want you to be on a state-approved platform in order to perform REN. Okay, there is a platform requirement. But in Alabama, they're very general. In a few other states, Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting. The key is it has to be simultaneous. I can see and hear the signer can see and hear me. It's not a video recording that I'm watching, and vice versa. I mentioned earlier, the journal can be paper or electronic. It is a traditional ink stamp or embosser for the notary seal. And again, some states do want that notarial certificate to indicate that this was a remote ink notarization. Piggybacking on what Marcy mentioned, there are some advantages and disadvantages to REN. If you haven't noticed, folks are really on the move right now, especially a lot of Americans, either for personal reasons or for business. And I find many times my customers are traveling on business, and they can be hard to pin down. And even if you can pin them down to one location, from what they say, there is a long wait at the overseas embassy or consulate in order to get before a notary. Same thing with a witness on a document. So again, if you work at a company with people who are remote and travel a lot, this is when REN could be a solution. Once a REN notarization is completed on the face of the document, looking at the document, excuse me, it appears the notary and the signer were really in the same room at the time of the notarization, unless on the face of it, unless there is that notarial certificate calling it out that no, folks were somewhere else, the signer was somewhere else. And as Marcy alluded to, there are some states, some organizations that require wet signature on their documents in order for those documents to be able to be processed. On another slide, I show some of the most common documents that require wet signature, but they fall in the category of banking, probate, insurance, and in Alabama, notaries, we have to notarize the signature of the couples on a
Michelle, I think we lost you again. Maybe you could try turning off your video.
ready.
Oh, you're back. Do you want to try turning off your video and seeing if that makes a difference?
You suggesting that? Yes. Am I hear me yet or no?
You sound good now? Yeah.
All right, let's see how this goes. The advantages of REN, the list of documents that cannot be remotely notarized is short. In Alabama, anything related to voting or the elections cannot be notarized in this fashion. For other states, jurats would often show up on the cannot notarize remotely list. Many documents that require apostilles and authentications. In many instances, countries want the notarization to be done with wet ink. So again, that's another advantage of using REN. And remote online notarization has its own challenges at times. So what may start off as a REN notarization and fail, perhaps REN can be an alternative. You still got me, Marcy?
Yep, you're doing good.
All right. Again, I took a look in my journal and I wanted to see what types of documents I've notarized over the past few years using REN. Hands down, limited power of attorney forms. Usually the signer has property here in Alabama and it's being sold or refinanced or purchased, and the signer is not in Alabama. And so they are designating a family member to go through the closing on their behalf. I recently did a residential seller package I mentioned already the Alabama marriage certificate, the apostilles, and for apostilles and authentications, typically it's when the signer needs their passport or driver's license or school transcripts, copies certified, and then apostilled or apostilled. Who are the customers? Hands down, I meet with more enlisted service members than anyone else. They're on the move, and this really works for them. Students who are studying abroad, again, employees who work for government contracting companies, and then individuals who are Americans who have chosen to live abroad. The disadvantages of REN. I know I from day one when Ron was rolled out, there's always been that concern about the signer being in an environment where they're being forced to sign or they aren't who they say they are, AI, all of that. And that is still a concern. I think about it every time before I start a REN notarization. Even though I've performed now over 100 of these, I take care with every appointment. I don't want to get too comfortable. I mentioned on the screen one famous case, Fang versus Nexus Development. I believe it was filed, yes, in the state of Washington, where it wasn't a REN notarization, it was a RON notarization. And unfortunately, the signer was not who she said she was. And this really caused me to sit down and revamp the manner in which I perform my RENs to just really be careful in the ID verification process. And now with AI being at all of our fingertips, it's a lot easier now for someone to take on someone else's identity and or voice. So yeah, I really don't take this lightly at all. Another disadvantage of REN, there are documents that involve multiple signers in different locations. I had it easy this morning, early this morning. I met with a family of 4. One person was in Canada, another person was in France, and the parents were, I think, in the United States. Thankfully, everyone had their own form to sign separately, so I could do one call, one Zoom call. But normally, I would have had to, if it had been the same document being signed by multiple parties, it would have been separate sessions, very time consuming, which is the biggest complaint about REN. Meeting the signer online, watching the signature be made, waiting for that document to be mailed to the notary, and then sending it on, especially for overseas signings. Another drawback or disadvantage is REN is still misunderstood by state and federal authorities. In Alabama, I can attach a loose notarial certificate saying this document was signed remotely. But whenever I do, it can cause a little bit of a concern. And so Alabama gives the signer and the notary the option to use that certificate or not. But in some states, it's mandatory. And then the other disadvantage is in not just Alabama and other states, it's still new to notaries. There's still a lot of uncertainty. That ID verification process, there are layers to it. A REN notary, you're going to see IDs from countries that you've never seen before. My camera is off, but I think most of you are familiar. The National Notary Association, on their website, they do sell ID checking guide books. And so I make sure that I purchase one, the international edition, as well as the guide for the United States and Canada, so that at least visually I can compare what the signer is showing me on the camera. I also have them take a picture of the ID and send it to me so that I can, prior to the Zoom call, really study and examine their ID. Cultural language considerations. I had a REN appointment during Ramadan once, and the husband was serious about getting it done, and his wife wanted him to observe the Ramadan hours. And so, I was patient, and I told the husband, you know what, let's reschedule for another time. And there have been times when the woman has been not the same couple, but the woman had a face covering. And I had the conversation with her that for a certain part of this notarization, it was important for her to remove it. And so we worked out how to best have her do that and still be on camera and just still feel respected. The REN fee. Unbelievable that most states do not indicate in the law what or how much a notary can charge for REN. So the law is silent. I believe it's because, well, again, it could be because states are considering it to be a type of remote notarization. And so they may assume that you can charge the fee for REN. Alabama doesn't have REN. And so there is nothing in Alabama's law addressing what we can and cannot charge other than the traditional notary fee. And so personally, I knew I could not afford to perform REN unless I tack on another fee to cover the expense of Zoom, an online database to check public and private data records. So I do tack on another fee. And then finally, administrative tasks. There's a lot to coordinating a REN appointment. The mailing, the faxing, not the faxing, but the scanning and emails. So there are a lot of logistical steps, the scheduling, the coordination that you need to factor in. So if all of that does not sound good to you, there's a possibility REN is not going to be your favorite thing to do. On the screen, this I got from the National Notary Association's website, the list of REN states. And from another source, West Virginia and Wyoming were listed as REN states. I'm going to go back give you another look at that if you wanted to take a screenshot or jot it down. And then other sources have West Virginia and Wyoming. If you are a REN enthusiast, think of it this way. An in-person notarization, I'm not going to say it's a no-brainer, but I liken it to checkers, and REN is chess. And so before pursuing this, I want to encourage you to become a notary law expert for your state. I recommend that you do. Just really, you've got to get into the weeds of your state laws for both traditional and remote notarization before you attempt this. Carve out plenty of time to research this before you accept your first appointment. Don't take any shortcuts on this one. Increase your E&O insurance policy limit, especially those of you who may be at 25,000. Just go ahead and bump it up. Don't ask me what amount, cap. I would suggest at least in the $100,000 range. And then ask questions. Ask lots and lots of questions before you roll it out. I am not a REN expert for every state. Alabama, I know really, really well. And so if you are in one of the other states and you have a sincere interest in learning REN in your state, and you'd like to speak with me and ask questions, feel free to reach out. Just shoot me an email or shoot me a text. We'll schedule some time. If you have some questions for me and you think that I can be of help to you. Those of you who are in Alabama, I do have a YouTube channel called Alabama Remote Notarization. And so I've started posting videos on that channel about REN. And the regular Notaries for Alabama channel is for just notary work. All right. Do we have time for questions?
We do have time. So let's see. I'll answer. Let's see. This one says, how long do you wait for the signer to send you the signed documents? Do you then contact them with a reminder to send you the signed documents?
Thank you for that question. In Alabama, I can wait as long. For most documents, I wait till it gets here. But in several other states, their laws said the notary has to receive that form within like 3 days. There are time limits on how long. What was part B of that question, Marcy?
Do you then contact them with a reminder to send you the signed document?
Absolutely. And that's part of that administrative logistic thing. Like, hey, still haven't received it. So yeah, I do. Do I have a set time? One, I ask them to send me the tracking um, number so I can track it. So that helps with some of that wait. But if I still don't receive it, then I'm sending an email.
I'm going to go back up into the chat to make sure I didn't miss anything. So everyone just give me a quick second here. I know someone asked about Missouri. I don't have Missouri on my RIN list, and I know neither does Michelle. That doesn't mean that we both couldn't be wrong here. So as Michelle said, it's really important to double check what your state says, because every state is a little bit different. And same with the receiver. We're seeing more RON documents, being allowed for apostees, but certainly always go back to the receiver of the document. They'll be the ones to tell you. Hold on, I know I had a good question in here.
I saw one. Oh, you probably reached that one. Someone wanted to know the benefits.
Yeah, we talked about the benefits. And is there another certification in that like Michelle said, is really state specific if they require you to register as a RIN or not. Uh, okay, someone wants to know what extra steps do you take in what extra steps do you take in verifying identification to confirm? That's a great question.
It really is. Because for me, that's the most important step in the process is that verification. So again, I require they send me copies of their ID prior to the meeting in ample time for me to study it and comparing. I mean, I'm in here like a college student. So there's that. Um, they send that to me. Again, I have access to a database. I put in their name, information, and I'm able to view a lot of personal history. So I've come up with my own KBA questions, and I'll ask them, where were you living before? What type of car did you drive? What professional licenses do you have? And then finally, for the deep fakes, I have started asking them to stand up, to turn their head, and I am zeroing in on their mouth to make sure mouth is linking up with voice. And if they have a blurred background, I tell them to take that off, because that can kind of distort the person's image. Um, I hope that answered the question. Is it perfect? It is not. It isn't.
And there are some RON platforms that allow for RIN. So they do have the credentialing piece, the ID verification as well that you can use. There are also, and you may have heard this if you're a loan signing person, a lot of times now title companies are offering for free to their agents a software that doesn't have the entire RON platform, but does have the credentialing piece up front. And notaries can use it as well. We have a video on our YouTube that we did with someone that it was $1 a person, and that person, you can go on and have that person do the credential piece. They answer KBA, it looks up their social media for you, and that's another layer that you can use to verify identity.
Marcy, someone asked me why I don't use identity proofing. Keep in mind, um, I can't just do what I want to do. I have to stay close to what my state allows. So the law does not give me permission to go out and use a platform. So I would need to get permission for one. And Mercy, I'm glad you brought up, yes, there are platforms that accommodate REN. But remember that next step again, what are they approved by your state? And what I found, I did schedule time with some platforms. It's been several years. Once I asked for a demonstration, the platform and I agreed Alabama style. Well, Alabama's requirements didn't pass muster for their platform. Was there another question there? Oh, KBA. My own form of KBA just comes from what I pull from that public records. So I'm asking the signer, where do you own property? Again, what kind of car do you have? Any other questions?
What type of fee do you charge on average? That's a hard question.
It is, but I will say this, I definitely start off with my state approved notary fee, $10 per notarial act. I would say my minimum is $75 for everything. And usually the signer is surprised it's that low, believe it or not. Now, keep in mind, the people that I speak with, they aren't familiar with Ron. You know, I'm sure Ron Not I'm sure in most states, Ron is like a $25 add-on fee, I think. But yeah, I would say 75 to $85 is my minimum.
Can you explain again the benefits of RIN and why would someone use RIN versus RON?
Depends on the, because some documents in Alabama and other states will not allow a electronic signature nor an electronic notary seal on their document. That's the shortest and most succinct way I can explain it. Keep in mind, Alabama has an approved RON. So no way, Jose, if a document needs to be processed, handled, used in the state of Alabama, will they accept an electronic signature or an electronic notary seal? There may be a 0.5% exception to that rule, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. Again, like I said, there are some documents that just can't be notarized, can't be signed electronically, like here in New York, but they can't be notarized electronically. A lot of estate paperwork for some states falls into that. And you've got an individual who's overseas and still has to have documentation, right, signed and notarized. So it's a good opportunity to work with a RIN notary, because that I have a few that I work with that I refer work to them because I can't do it by Ron. That person still has a need, and so they can get that documentation done so it's still wet signed. We've seen that before here, even with the receiver not accepting it. Medicaid and Medicare here in New York can be really funny. They won't take anything like that. So we've had people who've had to sign by RIN for that reason as well. So the benefit is just the opportunity to still allow a signer to have a wet signed document when they're not somewhere they can get to a notary in the state.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about KBA?
So knowledge-based authentication, if you were doing Ron, those platforms generate questions about the signer's past automatically. Because I'm not using a platform, I use Zoom. Again, I'm reviewing a report that I get from online. And when I'm meeting with the signer, after they show me their ID, I say, I have a few questions for you. Can you tell me where you lived before you lived at the place on your ID? Can you tell me your grandfather's name and date of birth? So that's my form of KBA. There was something else you said. Go ahead, Marcy.
I'll look at the next one. So about the platforms. So again, it depends on what your state allows, but there are some platforms. Secured signing allows for RIN currently. I know Notary Hub is developing a platform. eNotary on Call has a RIN feature platform. I know that there are other platforms who are working on this RIN feature. So don't be surprised over the course of the next year to see them more adding it on. Because I think the conversation, as Michelle and I just said, like, we didn't know there were so many states that did allow for RIN. And we want to make sure that if you are in one of those states, you're taking advantage of that opportunity. And if you're not in one of those states, that you are working out a referral system with those notaries so it benefits the both of you. Are you willing to be a resource for those that may need Ron if acceptable?
Say that again.
Can they refer work to you if they're looking for a RIN notary? Would
You
you like to be
can.
a referral source?
You can, yes.
All
Alabama
right.
requires 2 forms of government issue ID. That's a challenge for some people. I saw another question. Have I discussed how I ID folks with authorities, my state authorities? Absolutely. It's an ongoing conversation. Um, I really checked. I wanted to use a platform. It would make it so much easier. Right now, I pay a monthly fee for Zoom, a monthly fee for the database. It can add up. Now, this year's the first year that I'm getting more requests for WIN, doing more to cover the costs for that. So that's why I feel like, oh, and I want to encourage you in other states, seek out those other platforms, but again, have them demonstrated according to your state requirements to make sure it's a good fit. Any other questions that you see, Marcy?
I didn't see, oh, I'm a Ron in Texas and would like to get into RIN. Do you do any mentoring or training?
Good. Right now, mentoring for Alabama. I don't feel equipped at this point for Texas, but I still want you to reach out to me um, because I do have some Texas contacts that I could bring into the conversation. So definitely reach out to me. I've also heard different things about Texas. Um, they do have REN, they did have REN and don't anymore. So it really can get confusing. Okay,
Yeah.
Elisa, I'll look forward to your message.
If you are in a state and you're looking for a little help or assistance, you can certainly message me or Michelle, and we'll put you in contact with someone that we think would be a good fit for you in that particular state. And if we don't have someone, we'll certainly search around and see if we can't find someone.
Um, Boy, it left me that quick trying to read the messages that pop up.
Yeah,
Um,
Texas has RIN. Yes. It's on our list.
this is why REN is not quick, easy at all. Going back to that analogy I used of it being like, or a metaphor like chess. So keep that in mind. Do you have the time for REN? My REN appointment this morning lasted a full hour. It should not have, even with two signers. But I had an issue with one of the signers' ID that I had to work through. So just keep that in mind, especially those of you who are independent notaries looking for another stream of income. Again, I've been doing this for a long time and it's just now getting a little easier, less complicated.
Any other questions that we're happy to answer out there? No. Michelle, thank you so much. This was so informative. I hope everybody on the call learned some new good information. I hope if you don't do RIN and you can, that you start. And if you can't do RIN, that you reach out to someone who can. Certainly grateful that you guys all took some time out of your Saturday. I know time is precious these days to come and join us at the Extravaganza. If you're going to hang around for the next few sessions, we'd love to see you. If you're not able to, then I certainly hope you have a really great weekend. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for all you do for the notary community and for spending time with us today as well.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Have a great day.